Hello, and welcome to the Old Farm Bus Podcast. This is the Back of the Bus session.
Hello, and welcome to the Old Farm Bus Back of the Bus Sessions podcast. Today, I'm bloody excited. I've got a hero on here. I promise not to fangirl. I'm not going to fangirl you, but I do really love everything you're about. We've just had an hour chat on the way.
About that.
I love the way you see this education system, you see life, everything in general. So I'm going to jump in with Polarbear. Yeah!
Nice one, mate. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, mate. It's been an emotional roller coaster already. Are you planning to take me on anywhere else?
You're taking me. We'll pull off in this thing.
On the back of the bus, mate. Do you do a podcast all yourself? Is that something that you've been engaging with?
I've been on a few and like enjoyed the kind of chats and can't lie, as a lot of people were, I guess, when we were kind of locked down and stuff, was liking the idea of what it was. We did a few things with our boys. We've got two sons where we always recorded chats. Just like we'd start with a theme. I remember the first one we did was just talking about money. We were having this big hour-long conversation, this philosophical debate about money and value and stuff. Fun, but then it always felt like it was kind of just for us. But what I have been doing recently is having chats with my mom about, I guess, basically just upbringing of first and second generation kind of settlers in Brom. And just stories, kind of collating. Like we've lost a couple of olders quite recently, and one of whom was like kind of really pivotal in my life. And you know, the most cliche way possible, it really was like, these things are just going, and we're just trying to gather as many as possible. The stories being like the most valuable to me.
I love your emphasis and way that you build a story. Why is story so important to you, and how have you got so good at telling a story?
Oh yeah, mate, thank you. I think it's one of them things where like everything I am or have is borrowed from the people I kind of grew up with, in the sense of they were just around, like talkers. Do you know what I mean? Like no one was anti-books. It wasn't like a kind of running away from academia or shunning the system or whatever. If anything, it was kind of like the opposite. There was a very traditionalist. My grandparents who came, I mean, they were bloody, what do you call it, coronation plates on the wall. So they bought into it fully, like their British passports coming up.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? They were conned fully.
Oh.
And then, they were just talked always. Because there was loads of us in the house all the time. So there was me, my mum, my dad, my sister, my nan and my granddad always. Sometimes my Uncle Lenny. For a long period of time, my uncle, my mum's younger brother that is, and his wife and their 3 kids, then 4 kids. So it was like there was no... I always wanted an imaginary friend, but there was never any space to have like an imaginary friend. But there was people just talking constantly, and people passing through the kitchen. Like when when my nan first came, she managed to get she had a bit of money, and she got a house from the council, so she'd have lodgers. And those lodgers, when they got their own place, they still would come over. So by the time I come around, there's just people passing through always. Our kitchen was like a
communal area.
Yeah, little thing. So you'd come down and you'd be like, people just be talking constantly. And what I'd, in hindsight, what I really tuned into was the way that some people could just speak and just hold it. Do you know what I mean? Like my nan would be cooking and telling the story. She wouldn't even be looking at you, but it would be, I know, not too similar why maybe some of the fascination with a lot of this audio stuff is at the minute. It's like you were just there with her, and I always found it gorgeous. I found it like magical, like genuinely magical, and it was like right, but never consciously. It never was a thing. It was just the way things were. I would remember going to other people's houses and noticing how quiet it was, and like it making me feel a little bit on edge, a little bit nervous, and I'd always be really happy to get home, and you'd be like
and we're having quite trivial conversation as well. It's
Yeah,
sort of very rigid and
I guess so. There was always just a lot of, everyone had a story about something, and whatever had happened, it reminded somebody of something else, which then reminded them. And some of them were more comical, some of them were charming, but it was always, people loved holding court. People loved like the kind of that's not what happened, and then so
it didn't always have to carry a philosophical message and deep impact.
No, there was none of that.
Just beauty of hearing your sound.
I guess so, and I think looking back at it now, I've been thinking about this for a long time now, and like at the time it just was what it was. But looking back, it's like you come with not a lot. you are in a strange kind of limbo where you're not from where you are, but you're no longer really, well, you are from where you're from, but like you can't go back there now because you've made a choice. So there's that weird thing where it becomes what you make it.
Yeah.
So you choose what this is, and so the version they would relay to me about Jamaica was not the reality of it, but it was what they were create. It was narrative. It was fiction. My favorite fiction. It was that sense of themselves and the truth injected in it, but there were embellishments and there were exaggerations and there were lies and there was all sorts. I mean, there was fantasy in it, but it just kept you and kind of held you there.
Wow.
So it was like when I always liked writing stories, but and then the falling into the speaking them, the spoken word stuff. It wasn't a plan, but it all became narrative very, very quickly. Like I never had any kind of drive or desire to get up and tell you something beyond. I'd rather show you something. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, right, they were just started coming out, and when I first I go, oh, you can do what you like. You can get up and you can do what you like, and if people like it, they'll listen. And for like a chunk of time, 3 or 4 years, it was just like brrr, they didn't stop coming out, and then they started getting longer, and then you start playing with other elements and more theatrical things, and it's like, oh my god, this can be your life.
Well, I mean, I'll tell a little story now.
Sorry, man.
No, mate, and it's very relevant to what you just said then, because your poem, Jessica, was the one that propelled me into poetry in such a way, genuinely. So I'll tell the story of me with you. I was supposed to support you once, and it was in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about it because it's that pivotal figure, and you spoke about pivotal figures in time, and I've got so many who exist around me and I've spoken to, and there's been a couple of teachers now and then, definitely family members, and then really close friends. Few and far between. It's been random parts of time, but I've always remembered them. But then there's been them where you've just seen on YouTube, or you've just seen through a book, or whatever it's been.
When did you see it? Sorry to cut you, but like, when did you? What was it? Was it a late night thing, like down a rabbit hole? Was it what?
Rabbit hole stuff? Yeah. I knew I liked poetry because what happened to me was I lost a friend while I was away through a knife crime incident. And I've always been told through my life, and we're doing a workshop on this bus with kids that feel this way, but you're stupid, you're dyslexic, you can't. So the one lesson that I stayed well away from was English and writing. But when I was away and I got this phone call, I bawled my eyes out, but I was taking observations in South Africa of monkeys. So every minute, Coco scratched its bum. And I just took the day off. And this massive purge just come out. I was like writing everything out, and I'd never felt that way before. It was so empowering. I was like, oh my God, writing isn't this really small parameter of this is what writing is. It's all of this stuff in me, and I've never been able to say before or get out, and it was just so cathartic. It was a piece of beauty. So I knew I liked writing at that point, but that's where you go on this journey of, well, who else does this? Because I thought I'd made something up at a time. I was like, I'm going to do like rap without a beat and just say what's going on. It was like, oh, it's an art form that's been done for a long time.
I didn't know about it either.
Dude, it blew my mind.
I
can't believe I'd never been exposed to it. And there was this bittersweetness of, why I order? Why didn't you show me this? So I come back from travelling, as I was telling you before, lost a partner, went through a horrible time, treacherous, psychedelic, everything. But then I went to loads and loads of nights and started meeting different creatives, and Scroobius Pip was one who I'd met in a scene. I thought, this guy tells it. And very close time and proximity to that, he was like, yeah, there's this Polarbear character, there's Holly McNish, and I just started going on YouTube rabbit holes. So it would have been 10 years ago, man.
At least. Man.
So long ago. So, but your poem, Jessica, that I really want to get into, I never knew a poem could be long and keep you, like you were saying in your story then, for the way it did. I was in the ride and I was emotionally invested. I was crying and laughing and, Dad, listen to this. And it's just so powerful. And I tried to create something of a chord to it on how I felt and my family. So you really grabbed me there.
Mate.
And you took me for a ride. And I'll tell you, I was so excited to meet you in Birmingham. It was my big gig. I was going to perform that poem because you'd give it to me. So I wanted to do it for you. But it was when I was driving on the motorway.
Yeah, you said.
All the way down.
Mate.
And then suddenly... B. Dolan was on. I blame him for this.
Good guy.
Oh, it was a weird... Oh, it was Sage Francis as well. They were in the album together. It was a really weird album. And I went to flick the song off because it was like... experimental stuff. And as I went to turn it over, I remembered I was driving a car. And I was like, okay, dude, you got to look up at some point.
Mate.
And someone told me to look up. And as I did, all the cars in front were stopped. So I had my little Toyota Yaris and I span... And I flipped it and it was on the head. Yeah. And I remember everything was in slow motion.
Yeah.
Because I was looking out upside down out my window and there was a car coming at me real fast. And I just wrote myself off. There's a lot to that story.
Yeah. That's a piece in itself.
Honestly, man, I wrote about it. I'll give you a book after.
Yeah.
But I never got to meet you. But you were that pivotal figure in my journey.
Yeah.
And you're here today.
That's mad,
and we're doing something for the community. And I'm so excited. So I needed to tell that story because for when I listen to this back, I'm going to remember it and be like, I'm so happy it happened.
Wicked. Well, thanks for having me, man. Seriously, because it's one of them things where it's like, you have no idea, dear. It's like, oh no, I didn't. And I mean, I'm sure there are people who, we were talking before about this idea of planning and stuff. And it almost sounds now like you're being self-effacing or whatever. I just wasn't thinking about anything at all.
Yeah.
It felt like it was just coming out. I would remember something and I would sit down and I wouldn't even write them down. Like I'd remember something and I'd think about it and then a phrase would come out, like be a certain thing. And because rhyming has always been part of my life since young, that's the way they were coming out. And I loved that because I knew that my friends, if I shared it with them, they'd at least listen if it rhymed. As reductive as that sounds, but it's like then you got so you start playing around with these patterns and they just start forming.
Yeah.
And then you're speaking them, and then you go and share them to people, and it's like, this is making me think of this. And still to this day, like people will get in touch about that thing. I didn't even know it was being filmed, lad.
Really?
That was the first time.
Wow.
So basically, this is going to sound.
Was that your breakthrough as well? Like that poem was sort of.
That's the one that definitely sorted out a lot of opportunities.
Right. Yeah.
For sure. But it's like it's going to sound nuts. That was on Sunday. I was involved with a night called One Taste, right? And Danny, who ran One Taste, filmed it. Didn't have a name. She called it Dumpling at the time because I'd mentioned dumpling in the thing.
Oh, yeah,
right?
of course.
I wrote it. I started writing it and speaking it on the Friday, right? Was writing, staying up all night Friday night. It was just coming out and shaping it, walking around Saturday thinking about it, and then performing it on the Sunday, and it's up on the thing.
Wow.
And then you're like, right, okay, cool. And then people start getting in touch. You go, okay, what happened? And it was actually an evolution of an earlier thing that I'd written. The first proper one that I'd written was about bumping into an old friend, and it had jumped time. Like I remember, it's called David, and it was about me thinking about a kid I was at school with who we were really tight with, and then secondary school we split, and then I bump into him later, and he's just come out. He's done 4 years or whatever, and like. It was just that jumping thing, and it changed things for me. The filmic thing of it's like, oh right, this is my thing, I think. But I was never happy with it fully because it felt like these two scenes, but it wasn't it didn't feel celebratory enough to me. And so when the Jessica thing, when that kind of came, I was so chuffed because it felt like a film, but it felt musical. But it felt like it was celebrating something, and I'd not long become a dad.
Wow! Oh,
and
mate,
so
giving me shivers.
Do you know?
It
It was one thing. And you know what it's like, man. It just when it comes, and when you have those moments, and so it was like, oh, and I felt it mattered, and I think you can tell. I think when someone's saying what they want to say.
Yeah.
And it's why I kind of over time just did less and less and less of it, because the things were becoming longer. So I was repeating myself a lot.
Yeah.
And because it hadn't been a plan, I wasn't trying to get somewhere. It wasn't like I fell out of love with something. It's just that, no, these ideas I'm having now, they're not for this form. So I want to put all my energy into this. And people are saying, come and do the gig. I'm like, I've only got the older stuff. And they'd be like, that's all right. And I was like, no, it doesn't feel right. Because I feel like I'm almost like a different person now. And it's nuts because they're They weren't written down anywhere, all these ones.
I hope there's a few artists listening to this, because this is going to give a lot of allowance to those people.
Do you think?
Listen, this is how I felt, but I was trying to put words to it and articulate it, and you're doing it so perfectly now that I've never really been able to do.
I can only do it in conversation. It's a funny thing, we were talking before. Genuinely, I can sit, if I try to sit and write, I've been asked to write essays and stuff before. I can't do it, man. I can't do it because it's like chip on the shoulder stuff from younger, where I feel like, because I fell into it genuinely, it feels like I'm being disrespectful somehow. If something comes, I will run with it and I'll give it my all, and then I will try and make it as the best thing I've ever made. Yeah. But if someone presents me with a thing that's just an opportunity, if it doesn't feel right, I can't force it. Yeah. Because I can hear a voice going, "What are you doing? Like, what are you doing?"
And I can say that for that Jessica poem, it's one I heard, was so inspired by, but I didn't immediately go off and write. Yeah. I needed something to happen, because I just knew, oh my God, I want to be able to tell a story for that long and keep the attention and keep people on the ride.
You did it though.
But it was only because, probably a year later, but my granddad, I found out he got cancer, and you know, my dad had been quite a high-profile footballer all his life. My granddad knew how to sort of build a relationship with my dad through football. So I was actually Maxie, the little kid in my story, but I was trying to process my granddad leaving us. He never actually died. He got through his cancer, but I wrote it in a day, and I went back to yours just to go, oh, the time's right, the time's now. I can do the story thing because I need to process this thing about my granddad. And it all just went the same again.
But also as well, another layer of it is you went full the videographer mind or whatever. You went proper epic.
Did enjoy that.
You're bleeding and the time is jumping, and you're giving me the gift of like giving me a breather where the words are coming up. Like, I mean, I watched it again earlier.
Oh, thank you.
But it's one of them ones where it's like, right,
best day of my life. This might be.
But what's funny is, and I don't mean this to sound disparaging to anybody else, is it's like, right, you can tell. Not even when someone's doing it at the wrong time, but
for the wrong reason.
What you're saying to me, I genuinely believe this is less important than why.
Yeah.
Right. And genuinely, I can be impressed by something, but once I leave the room, it's gone.
Yeah.
Right. If it's the right time, and it's got to happen then. I think, and maybe this is just my own self-regard, I think I can tell.
Yeah.
And what it means is I don't have favourite artists. I have favourite songs. Or I have favourite moments. And do you know what I mean? Or favourite lines in a verse. And it's just because that moment, that pinpoint, and you and I just want to believe you.
Mate.
I want to get to know you and I want to believe you.
I'm really glad you just said what you said, because also from me telling that story there about the car and then you being my pivotal figure though, I would love to hear a couple of your pivotal figures on a journey. Did you have people that you looked up to and mentors? And
right, it's nuts, right? Because I don't not many, right? And not because I wasn't like I rated stuff, people that I didn't know, but the people who impacted me the most were my granddad, who was technically my step granddad, and a friend of mine called Lenny, who both of whom like passed in the last 3 years. And so Lenny was only like he was 8 years older than us, and he was the first person who I met who made music, right? And I know everything gets like hyperbolic after someone passes or whatever else, but my mum genuinely was ridiculous. Like I would sit whole evenings behind him while he was on the PC and in Reason, right, just chopping stuff up. And I would happily people would come, people would go, people would pass through, you know, they'd bring the weed or whatever, and they'd bring food, would come, I would just sit there, just mesmerised, in the same way that I would with my nan, where it's just like, this is exactly what you are supposed to be doing. And then, at one point, he was like, right, I write stuff and never show anyone or whatever else. And I can't remember how it happened, but he gave me a tape, and he'd remixed Shimmy Shimmy. He'd remixed some old Wu-Tang stuff up with his, and I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed the Wu-Tang, the RZA, and like RZA is incredible. Yeah. But it just was something about the sounds and something about his language, and then he was like, write something. I'm like, shut up, and then I did, And then I write more, and then we would just go, and there are hundreds of tracks of us that we've never shown anyone, and never will, because we never wanted to be on stage. We never wanted, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every now and again, one would just, if the moment felt right, and I'd share one on the MySpace.
Really?
Back in the day, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then the stuff with the spoken word happened as an accident, because a mate of mine saw a thing and went down to it, and he said, they just rhyme with them. He'd seen the thing with Saul Williams, the slam, in the prison.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it. He's like, we can go, let's go and do it. We went down, had a couple of drinks, and then it just went from there.
Wow.
But then I started getting excited by writing with space and playing with what space was and not being confined, alongside properly rhyming to a beat, and that will never go away. I still do that to this day. But that's not for anybody else.
Did it come naturally to you to do it to the beat? Because a lot of poets try and go to the beat, and
it was first. Yeah,
doesn't come quite natural.
No, for true. And like I hope it doesn't sound too like. Yeah, it did. It made sense. And what was nice was, it made sense because I wanted him to think I was good at it, and I was listening to stuff, but I was never really. I wasn't really listening to words, ever. Yeah. The voices were just another instrument.
And cadence.
Yeah, exactly. So it was flows and it was patterns and it was cadence and it was intonation. That's what got me to people. And then on top of that, or after that rather, I would listen to, but I would always find like a line. I couldn't take a whole thing in. So my favourite people like Pharoah Monch or A$AP Rock or Doom, were the people that every time I listened to it, I feel like I found something else. Like people would always assume that I liked quite overtly like narrative story rap stuff, and we danced to Slick Rick and that back in the day, but I'm not a massive fan of the story rap.
Really?
No, it's weird.
Mike Skinner style?
No.
The
first album when it came,
yeah,
we were like, yo, because we're from Brum as well.
Yeah,
right? And it was like,
I was imagining that.
And we'd hear people and like, that's exactly what this is now. No one else has to do that now. Leave it alone. All the stuff after that didn't really
resonate.
Didn't really resonate or anything else, but that's fine. But it was like that moment, because you could hear. He was using sound banks and instruments that we were using as well, messing around with, because they were just the stock ones, right? Native instruments and like the Wavelab stuff. You could hear the samples.
Do you think, are you similar ages?
Yeah, I think we're exactly the same age.
Wow.
I think so.
Wow. So, and similar places, and you're doing similar things.
Relatively, I guess. Yeah, and people, people would make they'd say a lot of when they were describing what I was doing, like no nonsense or like everyday tales or whatever, and they would draw parallels.
Yeah.
Never met him.
Really?
No.
Why do you think some stuff hits and just propels and goes forward, and some artists that you listen to and you're like, why have you never been discovered? Yeah. Why have you never gone on that journey?
I think it's a mix. I think the majority of it, is as arbitrary as timing. I do genuinely believe that. But also I think that there's, like, people just want stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are people who are amazing, who have somewhere they want to get to, and they put in the time. They're at least going to get to a level of notoriety where enough people are saying that you're kind of good at this, that someone else notices and goes, okay, let's give them more of a platform kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? And I think that it's like, I've been close to a bunch of people who are famous.
Yeah.
Right? And like, ranging from like people who everyone would know, but nah, man, not like even then.
Has your ego ever sort of got lost?
Dude, I've got loads of it. I think I'm amazing.
Yeah, good. You bloody are.
Dude, I think. I mean, as a person, I think I'm brilliant. But it's not. I'm not. What's the word? I don't want to say. I'm not bothered.
Yeah.
I'm not bothered, and I think the timing of stuff, and it wasn't just parenthood and things like that. It was just like, right. It comes back to like, I don't know what this is. And I don't now want to just choose. I'm now, my world's opened up to all these possibilities. I can do anything. We can tell stories in different forms. We can collaborate. We can play with people. Everyone's telling me, okay, right, here's what's going to happen. This is getting traction now. You're going to do this. I've sat down with people who told me that I'm a comedian. They want to put me on them shows where they give you like a slot and I write a poem for like 5 that sums up the topical events, like a Ali G type thing. Yeah. All them kind of meetings. And you go because you're like, this is weird, man.
Just want to see what it's about.
You're fascinated. Yeah. And also, don't get me wrong, man, people goes, all right, it'll be 10 grand a week to do this. And you're like, what did you just say?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? I'm not stupid.
Here's my soul.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not stupid, but it was more just that thing of like, if I can't get to sleep, I was 24 when I first got on stage.
Yeah.
If it had been
Bloody
19,
hell,
if it had been
shocked
19,
by that, yeah.
if it had been 1918, who knows where I'd be now, mate?
Yeah.
I'd be up my own arse, or I'd be dead. Maybe, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It was. We were talking before about thresholds of stuff and where things are and timing was. I was like, there are people who I knew up until I was like 20, who I've never seen since, who didn't have Google.
Yeah.
You go and chat to me like knob, they'd think I was an idiot.
Yeah.
Not because I was mean or anything else, but because I just didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was doing nothing. I was wasting time. I was self-destructive or whatever else. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I think but it was just it all happened in such a short space of time.
Yeah.
I went from working on a building site, writing little scribbly notes to try and impress Lenny, sleeping in my mum's spare room.
This is a great story.
With nothing in May, through to in January the following year, living in London with my partner who's pregnant in her folks' bedroom, having registered self-employed, to being about to go on like a spoken word tour, and this is now my living, like less than a year.
Dude. Wow.
So it's like, and when I say that to say, not because like it was I want the weirdness of that, and the fact that it was like I'm learning on the job. Like, what is this?
I suppose when I'm alluded to ego, because I love myself, and I think that's a really good side of self.
Yeah.
It's more this commonality with artists. It's this make it and made it. And then when you get to that stage, because we never think it's possible, and you do get there, I suppose it's did you ever get warped in with the protection of, I need this to last, I need this to be forever, it's going to seep away from me at any point? Or did you have you kept a calm mind throughout all of it and just allowed it to do what it does?
I think so.
That's amazing. You're lucky, man.
Thank you very much. But I also think that it's not just down to me. Do you know what I mean? I am in a relationship that I've been in for a long time now. We have 2 children. It's like I was the guy who would turn up and we enjoy it, do his thing, but I would leave because I wanted to put someone to bed. I wanted to do bath time. And it sounds now like I'm being like trying to be self-righteous, but it was genuinely it was more fun.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it for a living, but I enjoyed the fact that I had the opportunity to do the stuff, and but it never got normal that someone would pay me to talk. Do you know what I mean? Like, that never got normal. The majority of my I'm rarely on stage now, hardly ever on stage now. Has been a long time. But being in a room, whether it's in a school or in the back of a bus, or whatever else, that's performative enough for me, but also feels real enough that I don't question what I'm doing. And over time, that lack of question has made me to feel an ease with it, and it almost to like think about a methodology or a pedagogy or like a way of being that I'm happy with. So it was like, it wasn't like I was saying before we started recording, it's like the not having a plan was a weakness, and all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, it makes me fluid. What I can do, or what I have to do, in terms of those, like, whatever comes up that I want to do, it's going to be fucking brilliant to me.
Yeah.
And I believe and I trust that if it is brilliant, I'll get another chance to do something.
And that usually emanates, doesn't it?
That's always happened. And then when it started happening in different forms, the stakes get bigger and then you start to collaborate with people. You're like, oh my God, it's not about me. If we're telling a story or whatever, it's about everyone involved. Yeah. How can I get more people in? Oh my God. And then now, how can I help other people with their story? I'm like, well, I don't know anything about stories apart from the way I do it. So let me share the way I do it and see if it makes, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, and then, 20 years later or whatever, nearly, it's just my job. It's, some of it comes out in a book. Some of it ends up on the stage. The majority of it stays in the room or on the back of a bus and then exists in the people who maybe take it or get sparked by it. And it's like, it's lovely to be in a place where that's not like a blurb to kind of like give myself the big one. It's genuinely the truth. Do you know what I mean? And
completely.
I think I was talking before about feeling strong. That's a strength that feel so fortunate and lucky to have. Is I say what I believe it. It is actually the truth. And I think for a long time, having spent most of my childhood and teenage years pretending either to be into stuff or not into stuff, or not because I didn't feel like I fit with who I was with, it's like, you can't really touch me now because I mean it and I enjoy it. Bloody hell. And I can go home and there's people there Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You're
Mate, I know you're not keen on people telling you what to do, but if you started a podcast, I would be a bloody big listener. I love the journey you're on and the way you tell it, and there's ancient wisdom grasped within that. I'm really enjoying it.
No, nice.
God, we've got so much we could talk about, and
Yeah,
we're gonna, and I really need you back on this bus.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've got about 10 minutes until it starts.
Yeah, good.
Could you talk a bit about the stuff you do in schools then, and the road you've been on with that? Because education, we spoke quite passionately about on the way here, and it was a love-hate relationship for me in my life.
Yeah.
You seem to have really found your feet and where you want to be with it.
Yeah.
Has that been a long process and journey, or as soon as you went into the first school and classroom, were you like, I'm here now, this is it?
I think a bit of both. I think very early on, because very early on, a guy called Richard Grant, who was performing stuff, he was already going into schools and really, after my first gig, and he then booked me to go to Glastonbury. And he also said, do you want to come and shadow me in a school? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm going to do a workshop. And I didn't have a clue what that meant. I didn't know what a CRB. I didn't know anything, right? And we rock up and we're in a class, and we're like, and he's I guess he a lot of the thing was stuff was about rhythm and drumming and that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, right. I think I want to help people. I want to tell stories. I want to mess with stories, and I got such a buzz from the room that I was like, right, I'm gonna, whatever this is, I want to do this alongside it. So I'd meet people who would like have the school stuff will be their bread and butter to fuel their art. Or whatever.
Yeah.
And really early on, I realised that it's like, right, no, I need this because I'm never more. I'd leave a classroom more charged and full of ideas and inspired than I ever did getting off stage.
Yeah.
And you're like, sweet, so it's this, and you go, oh no, but I want to do that still, so I feel like I'm doing what I'm helping other people do. But it took a while to realise that I could do it my way. So early on, it was very much like I was following people's...
Stick to the guidebook.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't plan anything.
Oh, you're not planning today? Right,
No,
get
listen,
off.
right, yeah, but what I mean is, you reach a point where you're like, well, I know what I do.
Yeah.
And I also know lots of different ways to go about it and to do it. So what's exciting is, who are you? Here's a bit, okay, that's who you are. Here's who I am. Here's what I do. Let's have a go. I'll be gone in a bit anyway. If you like to do more, let's stay in touch, because I will genuinely happily talk to you about stories. I still have chats now. People were in sessions like 15 years ago. Do you know what I mean? And it's like I was saying before, it's lovely. Just find a thing, man. You know what I mean? Like,
we were speaking of that on the way, weren't we?
Yeah, you find a thing and you go...
We're not saying, be a writer.
No.
It's, look at me, I really enjoy this thing.
You know what it's like, man. Wherever you are, your version will be slightly different to my version, but on the shelf for us was footballer, not even rapper, because there weren't no rap. The people who listened to were rappers. No, that wasn't a possibility. It was dealer, or it was something else that was dodgy, or maybe like a teacher or something that's slightly academic, really, but no one really, because you couldn't afford it. So it's like, right, if I'd have known that making stories or creating stuff that was about your own life was a viable choice, it should have been on the shelf. It shouldn't have been in the big poster going, everyone should be doing this. It should have just been an option. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. I don't think nothing teaches like example for me. So it's like, here's what I do. What you reckon?
But and that story, that it shows your existence matters.
Yeah.
You're never shown that you matter.
Yeah.
But as soon as you can spill it onto a piece of paper and then you can tell it, and other people are like, oh, that happened to me, or oh, that's similar to this. We're human, so we can all match on these parts of them. Yeah. And then you grow respect for one another too from it. Yeah. And there's nothing more connecting than stories.
Completely.
And I love what you've fallen into there. I think it's such a powerful tool to get the best out of people.
I hope so.
So excited by it.
But, and it's what I'm always going to do it in some form. Yeah. And I think what's lovely is now you reach a point where you're like, right, okay, I'm not writing. Okay, that doesn't mean it's closed. It's like, I'm taking pictures. I'm making music. You work with someone else who does what you don't do, and before you know it, you create something. You can create your own thing and love it. You create something with somebody else. It couldn't have existed by yourself. You feel that rush of that genuine collaboration. Yeah. I don't believe anybody leaves that alone.
No.
Even if it's just to maintain a relationship and check in with somebody over. Once you make something with somebody else, I think that's like that's a muscle that like it might get smaller or larger depending on how much you work it, but it doesn't disappear because it's incredible, and it will propel you and fill you with the juice that you need to just kind of like feel that there's a point to it all. I think.
What's some of the best collaboration work that you've done,
mate? Do you want the truth? Right,
yeah.
the most fun I have is when I'm kind of brought in as like the words person.
Yeah.
And my whole time is spent convincing the person they don't need any words. See, I'm like chilies. Do you know what I mean? We'll have the words a bit of Scotch bonnet. You need this much, and reducing less, or saying as much as you can without explaining stuff. That's the gorgeous stuff. I mean, I've worked with dancers, lots of musicians, bringing something to life that you've had in your head is gorgeous. But that's like still like you. People serving a vision, which is its own kind of gorgeous thing, but helping somebody else or kind of being part of a band rather than being an artist with a backing band, way more exciting. Do you know what I mean? Jamming
completely
is way more exciting than going, I'm going to accompany
collective.
You. Yeah, man, for sure.
Wow,
for sure.
The scene that you're in, and was it predominantly always in Birmingham, or was London your biggest part of it?
I did
then?
one gig in Brum, and then I moved to London. I didn't do another gig in Brum for like 3 or 4 years. And to this day, I've only performed in Birmingham maybe one handful of times. YouTube goes a long way.
Yeah, of course.
And because Birmingham was in everything, and when they would ask me what do I say, I'd say from Birmingham, please, because that's what mattered to me. Some people assumed I've always lived in Brum. People assume that, you know what I mean. So it's like, and so Birmingham's got loads of stuff and amazing artists, but I didn't know any of them.
It's just interesting because listening to you.
Yeah.
There's so much close connection on your story and my path, and I'm feeling that. The one bit where I've deviated a little is I kept on that expectation of when people said, "Oh, you should be performing," because I've said on this podcast before, but I always wanted this validation. I was desperate to be liked because I had a really lonely childhood, but yours was lonely, so you didn't feel any need for that validation, it seems, from the stories we've shared today, whereas mine came from this desperation to be sought out and clapped and applauded or whatever. But I stuck on doing things too long because of what other people or what I perceived other people wanted of me, whereas you seem to have had this strength and power to go, well, I don't want to do that anymore, or I'm going to go do this now, and just really consciously be aware of yourself and move with that inner GPS. So throughout the whole journey, where do you think that has emanated from or built from?
The same place with the magic in the kitchen.
Really?
Yeah. I was
allowing it to be.
Mate, from when I was little, and confidence was poured over us, like from little. Like the generation that I was around the most, which was my grandparents, the ones who came and had to navigate the most intense stuff. The strength they had was a kind of silent strength where they weren't their kids, my parents, their generation, they were the ones picketing and rioting. Their parents were like, you get on with this, that weird kind of silent pride, right? And like, but they made sure that we knew how valuable we were. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like,
completely.
And don't get me wrong, look at me, man. The privilege that comes with this as well is not lost on me.
Yeah,
so it's like, but we never left the house feeling like we weren't enough.
Wow.
So the more I think about it, and you know, our oldest turned 16 the other day.
That's a big word.
It's
enough.
like, I mean, I've heard you talk about it before when I was listening to the one we were talking about, and it's like it completely. And I think it's not even conscious of it until you get in later life and you hear people talking about things more. The gratitude I feel in that.
Oh, mate.
But it's one of them, lad, because you know what it's like. And the thing of it is,
so many beautiful moments today.
Well, thank you. But somewhere now, there's a couple of people sat in a bus who are like 20 years older than us, who haven't got there.
Yeah.
And that's not that we've reached an end point. It's just an awareness of, you know how it feels to, whether it's just for a moment or a day or a week or a little bit for like a couple of years, like to feel that go, no, it's enough.
Yeah.
You know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And you're like, right, I think with story, you can help that happen.
Oh man, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I really
and
do,
then
yeah.
and then tomorrow
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck story, still bollocks anyway.
mate. And that's life. We're human. We're
that's
flawed.
enough
and
as
it's-
well.
It is.
It is,
It's
mate.
all part of the ride.
Yeah.
Dude, we got to do this again. You know,
Dude,
we actually do have
it's
to.
lovely to speak to
I'm
you, man.
gonna. We've not done events for a while. But already, I know I'm booking you on for an event of whatever we do. I'm so excited because
man.
we need a longer podcast to get together because we have scratched the surface of areas there. And the hour we just had outside of this podcast, it's really hard with a guest like you because you just want to dive in every single direction.
Dude, I don't
But-
talk to that many people.
Mate,
I give the impression, so it's a pleasure.
I'm
Genuine
so
pleasure,
happy
man.
with the where we did get to in this short interview. But
Wicked.
what a podcast. I really appreciate it.
Nice one, Mikey.
I'll let you guys know if you've listened to this. The reason Polar Bear's here, we're doing a workshop today with some of the PC word is challenging behaviour, isn't it?
I think so.
That's the PC word. But some of the kids in the community, they're an amazing bunch. They've been at the Off the Breaks project that we've been doing, but now we are writing a community poetry collection anthology together, and I'm so excited about it. If you do want to get involved, you've got a kid that you think could really do with this opportunity, please just get in touch with us. I'm so happy to talk to anybody about more projects, other ideas. Just get in touch. I really appreciate it. Polar Bear, where can people see everything that you do, my friend?
Oh my days! I guess Google. My real name is Steven Camden. So if
You're
you
quite
Google,
Googleable, Matt. Googleable.
yeah. If you Google Steven Camden Polar Bear as like one word.
Are you on Insta though? I struggled on Insta to find you.
I'm there, but I'm not there.
You're
you
not
know what I
there.
mean?
Yeah, don't go to Insta, guys.
It's Home of Polar, HOMEOFP, and that's on the Twitter as well. But
That's where I caught you.
Okay, good.
Mate, big love for this.
Nice one, bro.
Guys, I'm going to leave you on this. I always do and I always will. Just be nice to one another, you beautiful set of buggers. This has been the Old Farm Bus, back at the bus sessions, and I really love you all. Just be nice. See you later.